Hi, my name is Diane Schuster, and you're watching one of a series of videos that demonstrate the capabilities of COZYROC's SSIS Plus, which is a software suite of tasks and components for SQL Server integration services. These demonstrations were built using SQL Server Integration Services 2005. The COZYROC tasks and components are available for SQL Server Integration Services 2005, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, and 2014 in both 32-bit and 64-bit editions. For more information, please visit www.cozyroc.com.
In this video, we're going to talk about the Dynamics CRM source component, which you can use to integrate or migrate data from the Dynamics CRM service. This component comes in a package of tasks and components called SSIS Plus that complements the standard SSIS. In COZYROC's SSIS Plus product, we provide source and destination components for Dynamics CRM, which support both 32-bit and 64-bit modes. In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how easy it is to copy the account records over from Dynamics CRM to a SQL Server table. I'll show you two different ways to configure the solution. One is good for simple transfers when you don't need to do anything fancy. The other method uses FetchXML and is good for handling more complex data operations. The first thing we need to do is install the Dynamics CRM source in our toolbox. So we right mouse click in the toolbox, we go down to Choose Items, and we go to SSIS Data Flow Items, and we find Dynamics CRM source, and we're going to check in the checkbox here, and then we click OK. And there you see we have the Dynamics CRM source in our toolbox. Now I'm going to show you how to copy the account records over from Dynamics CRM to a SQL Server table using an input type of entity. Now we're going to configure the connection manager. So we right mouse click and we go to New Connection, and there's Dynamics CRM, and our deployment is live. And we'll enter our credentials, and then choose our organization, which is COZYROC, and we'll test the connection. And it's good, of course, and we click OK. And now we'll drag the Dynamics CRM source onto our canvas, go in and configure that. So we associate this with the connection manager that we just set up. Now we'll go take a look at the component properties, and as far as the input type, we have the choice of entity or FetchXML, and I'll show you how to use FetchXML a little bit later in this demo. For right now we'll use entity, and now we go and we select the actual entity we're going to use, and that is account. And when you use the input type of entity, you'll get all of the fields from the account entity. So we only want to transfer 6 of them over to our SQL Server table. So we're going to remove all of the fields or columns that we do not want. So this is going to take a while. Alright, I just completed removing all of the columns that we're not interested in. I did have to leave this one column in here called Primary Contact ID so that the Primary Contact ID name will show up. That's what I'm actually interested in, is the name. So I'm not actually going to be mapping the Primary Contact ID to a field in our SQL Server table. And we'll connect these components. And we're going to use a data viewer. So we're just setting that up now. And now that's done, we'll go in and configure our destination component. And I have been playing with this component before, so it looks like everything is already mapped successfully, or at least everything that we're interested in. Now we'll go back in. We check that it's set up to use the correct connection manager, and also it has selected the correct table, which is the only one in that SQL Server database. We'll go take a look at the mappings, and all 6 of the fields that we actually want to transfer over have been mapped successfully. The only one that's not mapped is that primary contact ID, which we don't really want to bring over. And now we're ready to execute. Alright, and there's the 16 rows that were in our Dynamics CRM service. You can see all of the fields or columns have shown up. So we'll detach it so it can finish executing, and it was successful. And we'll stop debugging, and we'll go take a look at our execution results. And so the only warning that we have is about that primary contact ID, that we didn't use it, which was our intent. And all 16 rows were processed. Now we'll go look in the SQL Server table itself. And there you can see all of the data did get copied over that we wanted. Now I'm going to show you how to use an input type of FetchXML to configure the Dynamics CRM source. So we drag it onto our canvas, and we go in and we set up the connection manager. And now we go to component properties, and we're going to go down to the input type, and it defaults to entity. We're going to change that to FetchXML. And now we actually need to put our query in here. When you use this little button here, it'll take you to the Dynamics CRM service, and you can use the advanced find to actually create the FetchXML query for you. Alright, so I actually did use this to create my FetchXML statements earlier, but I just wanted to show this to you now. So I saved this advanced find, and that's what I used to generate my FetchXML. And here's the statements that I'm actually going to use. I saved them earlier in Notepad, and I actually edited it because I did not want to create any filters. I just want to tell it which fields or columns I want to save into my SQL Server database table. I want to point out that Dynamics CRM has automatically generated the link entity statement to pull the contact name from the contact entity for me. That's because I'm working from the account entity. So we're going to copy and paste these FetchXML statements. We don't need this anymore. And we'll just paste them in here. And we're going to actually pull over 9 fields. Now we'll go take a look at the column mappings. And we got a few extra fields, not just the 9 that I specified. The Dynamics CRM service knows what fields it needs. Like for the contact name, it also needs to pull the field contact ID, and you'll see that related to the owner ID also. And we'll go take a look at our input and output properties. This is where, when we used the input type of entity, we had to delete all of the columns we were not interested in. So with using the FetchXML input type, we don't have to do that. We just specify which columns we want. And now we'll connect the components. And we're going to configure a data viewer. And now we'll go in and configure our destination, which is SQL Server, a SQL Server table. So it looks like everything got mapped here. We'll go back in, and the connection manager is correct. It's the SQL Server, and there's only one table in there, and that's for this demo. Now we'll go look at our mappings. And this does have the 9 fields that we're interested in mapped correctly. So we're done setting that up, and now we can execute it. Okay, and we'll detach this so it can complete. Looks like getting all the data that we're supposed to get. And we'll stop debugging. Now we'll actually go look at the table in the database. We have all the 9 columns or 9 fields that we were interested in. In summary, I have shown how easy it is to migrate data from the Dynamics CRM service to a SQL Server table using COZYROC's Dynamics CRM source component. I showed how simple it is to configure a transfer using an input type of entity. Then I showed you how to use an input type of FetchXML so you can perform more complex operations. This component comes in a package of tasks and components called SSIS Plus that complements the standard SSIS. And that concludes this demo.